Okay, so today we're continuing a message series called Guardrails. And we've been taking a look over the last few weeks about some road stuff. No, I'm just playing. But here's what a guardrail is, just for those maybe that hadn't been here, and just to kind of update you, here's the definition of guardrails. It's a system designed to keep vehicles from straying into dangerous or off-limit areas. So most of us know what that is on the road, or maybe you don't. But if you need a guardrail, then you will know, right? I mean, if you go over a bridge and there's no guardrail, I don't know if you've ever done that, but absolutely intimidating. And what we learned about guardrails is that guardrails are put in safe areas, meaning there's nothing wrong with driving on where the guardrail is. There's a problem with going further than the guardrail. So the guardrail actually helps us. It kind of guides and protects us at the same time. And nobody really complains usually when they go, hey, man, when I hit that guardrail, it dented my bumper. I've never heard the first person complain and say, you know what I'd rather do? I'd rather just go off the cliff. You know, I'd rather just go off the bridge. I've never heard the first person say, man, everybody say, I'm so glad that guardrail was there. And so what we've been looking at is what if we established some guardrails in areas of our lives that where all of a sudden we might go off the cliff of life. If anybody ever done that? Where it's like you've been going down the road of life and all of a sudden you went over an area of life and you go, man, I crashed. And what do I do? And so we said, wouldn't it be nice to have some guardrails in our lives? And so we've defined it this way during the series, is that it's a personal standard of behavior that is a matter of conscience. That God wants to use some personal standards of behavior, and while we're putting those in some safe areas, there are dangerous areas that we go, hey, what if we backed it up just a little bit and kept us from going off the cliff of life? And so we've talked about many things in this series. Newbranch.net is our website if you want to listen to anything that you've missed. But today, we're going to talk about one of the most problematic areas for many of us. I guarantee you, if you pray, you probably pray for this. As a pastor, there's two things I can guarantee you, and I can almost fill in the blanks when somebody calls and says, I got a problem, and I need to meet with you about it. And the two things are this. There's sex, which we've already covered in the series, so you can feel comfortable. We're not going to talk about that today. And go back and listen. We've talked all about that. And then the second one is the biggest problem area that I see, the one that people pray for more than anything else. Can you guess what issue that is? Money. Okay, I don't know. Did somebody say something else different? Okay, I'm just playing. But money, right, or stuff, or whatever. But when you face, and here's how I know, right? When you face financial crisis, you will pray more than any other time in your life. I don't know about you, but for me, that is absolutely true. That when I face financial crisis, I pray more than I ever have in my life because it is so scary when you go, I don't know if we're going to make it, right? I don't know if we're going to have enough. And so you start praying more when it comes to those areas. And so when people call on the phone, as a pastor, you can automatically go, hey, you know, the two areas I know they're going to call about, sex or money. And sometimes I filled that in. They go, how do you know? You know, it's like, because that's what everybody's problems are. And so most of them relate to these issues. And today we're going to talk about, if you're here today and you're going, man, anybody go, man, I really need God to help me with my finances. God, I really need God to show up in a big way in my financial life. Then today you might want to pay attention because we're going to talk about some guardrails that are going to help in that area of our life. And Jesus spoke to this very issue in Matthew chapter 6. So if you want to turn there with me, Matthew chapter 6 and verse 24 is what we're going to talk about today. But if you've never read Matthew chapter 6 and you want to know what Jesus thinks about life, it's one of the best chapters, if you've never read the Bible, to really read about how Jesus thinks about prayer, how Jesus thinks about different areas of life. And so he's teaching all these people in kind of on the side of a hill. It was very informal, and he was just kind of teaching them all kinds of things about God. And what happened there is that those people had only heard religious teachings that really were not practical up till that point. And so when Jesus started teaching, they were like, man, what he says actually makes sense. Isn't it cool when you go to church or somebody's teaching from the Bible and they go, hey, it actually makes sense. It actually applies to my life. And in this case, he's going to teach us a principle that could change everything. And here's what he says. He says, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and the devil. No, that's not what he said. Right? Everybody knows the verse is going, no, that's not what it said. Why didn't he say the devil, right? Because the biggest competitor of God is who? The devil, right? You know what we'd say? But what he understands is this, is that while the devil could use the principle we're talking about today, a majority of people don't worship or don't openly worship the devil. Does that make sense? I mean, I've only met probably 0.0001% of the population that goes to a satanic church or says that, hey, my role in life is I actually physically worship the devil. I haven't met many of them. There are some. I have met a few that have recovered from that. But there's very few Satanists, honestly. But what he's talking about here is the number one competitor for your heart for God is what he's talking about here today. And Jesus hits it right on the head. He goes, the number one competitor of God, you cannot serve both God and money. In the King James, it actually says you cannot serve both God and mammon, which is the god of money. Which, if you understand anything about money, you understand money can become like a god. And a lot of us don't think of it that way. It's not that we start off and we go, hey, that's where we're at. But Jesus is saying, hey, God is interested in this subject, not because God needs money or even it cares about money, but what God's issue with it is this. It's the number one competitor for our devotion to God. And what he's saying is he's going, a lot of people are putting money in the same spot that God should be in. Now, that might sound oversimplistic because we go, hey, man, money makes the world go round. We need money, and Jesus doesn't deny that at all. In fact, he speaks more about money than he does about hell because he understands something, that where your money is, where your treasure is, there your heart will follow also. By the way, that's what, if you want to know what you depend on, mess with it and see. It's what we fear the most. If it gets taken away, there's all kinds of fears that come. And he's saying, I want to teach you how to overcome those fears and how to put God in his rightful spot so this stuff will make sense. He goes, I want to teach you a principle that if you do things in the way that God wants you to do, life is going to make sense. And that's kind of what he's trying to teach them. And I believe that's what he's trying to teach us. And if we get it, our life will be changed. In fact, if we get the principle we're talking about today, here's what's going to happen. All of a sudden, for the first time in your life, money is going to make sense. God could bless your life with money if you understand what we're talking about today. If you don't, you'll never understand it. It will always be a problem for you. Okay, so let me tell you about two different types of people because it's going to help because we come from different ways. Last week, me and Marie spoke together. And there couldn't be two more opposite people on the planet than me and my wife, which is awesome, right? Opposites attract. And then we talked about last week, they also attack, okay? After they attract, then they attack each other. Because why? Because we're made so different. In this area of money, we could not be any more different. There are some of us that are consumers, or a better way to say that would be spenders. How many spenders do we have in the room? You just like, if you have money, you want to spend it. Money was made, this is my motto for life, right? Money was made to have a good time with, right? And my philosophy, and Marie knows this about me, had been, and it's slowly changing as I become a Christian, and especially a pastor, I've had to change some of this, is that, hey, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we're going to die, right? I mean, so my thought would be is that why would you want to save something for tomorrow when you have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow? You better enjoy it today, right? Because I'm going to tell you, you're never going to be better looking than you are today. It's only going to get worse, right? Right? And you don't know what's going to happen to that money tomorrow, so if you have an opportunity to have a good time, you better take it now. That was always been my philosophy, because everybody's like, we're going to save for the rainy day, and I'm going, I'm sorry. I've seen what happens the older you get, and this is about as good as it's going to get ever. So let's spend it up, and let's have a good time, because let's not think about what's happening tomorrow. That's kind of my philosophy. So that's spenders, okay? I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying God has relieved me of this burden, but it is a very consuming mentality. I'm going to tell you where that leads in just a minute, okay? All right. Second is savers. Okay, that's a nice way of putting it. Savers. How many savers do we have? You go, hey, if I get it, I want to save it. I'm all about looking for the future. And there's another way to put savers. They don't like this because my wife is a saver. Hoarding. They're hoarders. Okay. Ooh, we don't like that, do we? And I know that's going to be real agitated to the saver because you thought you're better than the spender, didn't you? But you're not, okay? Because here's what you're thinking. You're going, hey, a lot of times for savers, and there's nothing wrong. By the way, I want to tell you, there is nothing wrong with spending money. God doesn't think that. By the way, there's nothing wrong with money. I don't know if you know that. There's nothing wrong with accumulating wealth. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, the Bible teaches that that the love of money is the root of all evil, not money itself. Money is just a tool. So there's nothing wrong with spending. God doesn't want you not to enjoy your life. God doesn't want you to not prepare for life. But what I'm interested in is this, is at the extreme, it becomes hoarding. What does it mean? The more I have, the more security I have. And my question is this, if I have more money, are you more secure? If I've saved more money, then I'm secure. if my faith and trust is put in the dollar, if my faith and trust is put in my money, then you're starting to understand it's not far for Jesus to say, which one do you choose, God or money? And you got to ask yourself that question. Hey, what is it that my life is fueled by? And you got to understand both of these. And I got to tell you, it's probably going to be a little bit harder for the saver because it feels a little bit better. And in some ways it is because you're going, hey, they're disciplined enough to save, unlike the spender that's going, I got to do it all right now. Sorry. But the hoarder or the spender or the saver is disciplined, but here's what they're doing though. They're thinking about the what-ifs of life, and their faith and trust is placed in, hey, I've got to hold on to this. And as long as I have more, I'm okay. But if I lose some of my money, then all of a sudden, my whole world collapses. When the dollar goes down in value, my life goes down in value. And I need to tell you what this is fueled by today because it's fueled my life for years. I would love to say it didn't fuel my life as a pastor, but it has. It fuels a lot of churches as well. And it's fueled by a word that we don't like to use, okay? Nobody wants to admit that they have this, and it's called greed. You can write this in the margin if you want to. And greed is simply this. It's the assumption that everything is for my consumption. By the way, that's both saver and spender. Oh, wait a minute. Both consumer and hoarder. It's fueled by greed. It means that everything that I get, it's for me and mine. It's for me, and I have to get more. And the more I get, the happier I am, or at least that's the premise. I can tell you something as a consumer. The more I get, I didn't become happier. The more I want. How much do you want, John? How many parties are enough? How much stuff is enough? How many ski trips are enough? How much North Face equipment is enough? How much whatever is enough for you? A little bit more. That's what I say in my head. See, I don't want too much. I just want enough, but I don't have. How many people think they have enough? Don't raise your hand. You're lying in church. I don't want you to lie in church, okay? Right? How do we know? Because we're working to get what? I want more, and I want more, and I want more. And there's nothing wrong with accomplishment. The Bible is full of accomplishment. God made us to be fruitful and to multiply. But he's saying, if it's based on me just getting for myself, you're going to be fueled by greed, and it's going to be a hole that you cannot fill, whether you are trying to fill it with consumption, which turns into consumer debt. And I can tell you last week of how it destroyed my life and almost destroyed my marriage and almost lost my wife. Right? Big piece of that was that. My need to consume almost destroyed my marriage. Can I be honest? Almost I wasn't able to be there for my wife at the hardest time in her life because I didn't prepare for a crisis because it was all for my consumption. Can I tell you something? With the savers, the same thing is true. If it's all about me saving and containing and doing, I'll get more and more and more, and all of my wealth will be, that's where all of my identity is wrapped up in. And I'll tell you what, when your 401k looks like a 101k, you will be down and you will go, I don't even know if there is a God because he hasn't blessed me, and I don't have enough, and there is not enough money in the world to keep you protected. And I know that because as a pastor, I get to see the entire circle of life from birth to death, and I get to stand by the graveside, and I get to look at a person that saved all their money, and then they got to spend it in the last few years of their life because they were unhealthy, right? And there's nothing that can protect you from that. All your money will go, and you won't be putting it in your coffin usually. And if you do, you're not there anyway. You get the idea? So you got to be careful that if I save, I think I'm better, but I'm not because I'm just saving it for what? And Solomon says it, right? The fool has said, I'm gonna get more and more and more, and I'm gonna fill my barns with more and more and more. And the more I get, the more I want, and then I get it, and then eventually you die a fool, and you leave it to your kids. And you know, guess what? The saver leaves it to their kids that are consumers, and it's gone within one generation. And nothing new under the sun. Man, I'm painting a really horrible picture today, right? How do we get, what do we do with this? And I want to give you some guardrails today because here's what I believe. What I'm going to say, here's the danger in what I'm talking about today. A lot of people are going to look at what I'm saying today and you're going to go, oh yeah, I've heard that. I don't want you to think today about whether you've heard it or not. I want you to think about whether you do it or not. If you do what I talk about today, God will bless your financial life. There's no doubt in my mind. If you don't, it won't work. You'll be doing this. We'll go back one. Sorry, we're not ready yet. The reason why I want to be careful is because it's going to seem so simple that you're not going to think that it's important, yet the people I talk to don't do it, and we have every excuse in the world why we can't live about the way I'm about to tell you. And it's biblical. It's exactly the guardrails I truly believe that God has. Now, there's pieces of it where you can talk about percentages, and I'm not so worried. Here's what I want to explain today. Today is not the day I'm worried about the amount. This is not a financial lesson, because I need to tell you something. God isn't concerned with the amount. I just be honest with you, really upfront with you. God doesn't need our money, nor is he dependent on our money, or nor does he care about money. You know how many money systems God has seen in his lifetime? All of them. He doesn't care. He owns it all, and he really doesn't care about money. You know what he also cares about? The devotion of your heart. And if you put your faith and trust in money, what God understands is this: your heart is going to go up and down with money. And take it from a consumer. You can't consume enough. I can get a saver, and I bet they can tell you that too. You can't save enough. You will never fill, the God of money will never be satisfied. But there is a God who can fill that void and bring joy into your life, which after all, isn't that what we're trying to buy with it? And he wants to teach us how to do it. And there's a principle at play for those that follow Christ. If you don't follow Christ, you might want to pay attention because maybe you never really understood this. And when pastors talk about money, here's what I know. When I get ready to tell you what I'm about to tell you, here's what the culture does. They go, what does church know about money? And after all, church just wants your money. I'm sorry, that's not untrue. There's a lot of churches that just want your money. If we were to be real honest, no, we don't do that. Oh, yeah, they do. You want to know why? Because a lot of churches, including ours sometimes, are fueled by greed. The assumption is all for our consumption. We just want the bigger and the best in this stuff. We got to break the back of this in our lives, even the church, or all of a sudden we'll be fueled by greed, and it will lead to a place that's not of God. And God has a solution. I'm going to tell you what it is, because I'm going to tell you it's taken me probably until I became a pastor, right after our life fell apart with Murray, that what happened to me was I got to see a different side that said, hey, you know what? Because of the money part, I was about ready not to go back to church anymore because I know what church is about. It's just about money. That's all it is. It's just a marketing plan. It's just, they do a great job with it. They make a whole bunch of money. But if that's what it's about, I don't think I need a God like that. I don't need the God of greed. But what I found was this, is that God isn't interested in money. What he's interested in is your heart. And he wants you to do something that's going to change everything. And I want to tell you about it today, so I just want to warn you. And here's what other thing I want to tell you. The culture is going to ridicule us for setting a guardrail because they're going to go, oh, no, they don't know what they're talking about. And what they're going to do is they're going to bait you to the edge, and when you fall off, they're going to ridicule you. Ever had that happen? Do it with your finances and see what happens. If you go over the financial cliff of life, the culture will ridicule you in ways you can't even believe. You will be lonelier. I have never been lonelier in my life than when I made financial mistakes. And I'm telling you today that there is a God who loves you right where you are, and he wants to instill a habit in you that's going to change everything if we'll only grasp it, okay? So let me tell you what it is, okay? It's very simple. We taught it to Wyatt from the time he was a kid. We were taught this. We did not do this. Andy Stanley, we were borrowing a message series from Andy Stanley called Guardrails. This is where me and him kind of divert a little bit. Andy could get up on the stage and say, I've been doing this my entire adult life. I'm like, good for you, Andy. I'm just playing. He's a great guy. He's amazing, and I appreciate them letting us use this. But he could stand there with his wife, and his story when he talked with his wife was about how that they always put God first, how they always gave a tenth of their income, how they always did these things. We didn't. So maybe I can just say there's hope for you if you're struggling. And by the way, even as a pastor, I haven't always done it. But I can tell you this. When I've done it the way God wants, my life has always been blessed. I've never regretted when I've done it the way God wants. And I have always regretted when I didn't, okay? So let me explain what the formula is. You might want to write this down. Here's the guardrails. 3 things. Give, save, and live. I can say it a little differently. Give, consume. No, I'm just like, give, you can hoard a little bit, and you can consume a little bit, okay? We'll say it nicer. Give, you can save, and you can spend a little bit. That's God's formula. And we even put some percentages to make it right. I'm not so interested in the percentages today, although we can talk about that. But I want to tell you, because I got a feeling there's one piece of this equation that's going to be missing. We've already talked about the second two. Now, is there anything wrong with either one of those? Absolutely not. They're a piece of our lives. But what God has taught throughout his entire word, and I never really understood it because here was my logic. And then I got God's logic, which is not the same as mine. My logic is why do I need to give to God when God has all the money, right? Anybody ever asked that? You're not supposed to ask that in church, but it is a good question, right? I mean, it's like, I'm sorry, God doesn't need that money, but I do, right? So why does he want any of my money? Why from the very beginning? Because when you look through the Bible, you know there's a concept all throughout the Bible, and it has to do with this, giving to God first. Now, we could say it's the biggest conspiracy of all time that makes the church rich. But a lot of churches aren't rich, and churches have risen and fallen. Denominations have risen and fallen. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with something that God understands, something that Jesus was teaching about this. You cannot serve both God and money. In fact, from the very beginning with Adam and Eve, you know what they said? That they would give a portion to God, the first of what they had, the best of what they had. You read it. I mean, in the book of Genesis, it's absolutely amazing. So it supersedes all the laws of Moses. It supersedes everything else, is that a portion of what you have is given to God, but where it is given to God is on the front end. Because the reason why, and I want to explain it, because this is, and I understand that what I'm talking about today is the issue that people go, this is why I don't go to church, because every time I come, they talk about money. Now, we rarely talk about money, but we should, because here's the problem. We haven't done service to say, when we don't give, then here's what we're doing with what we're doing. We're saving or we're spending. We're hoarding or we're consuming. And what God is saying is, if you want to get over greed, there's one way that you can get over greed. You want to know what it is? Give. It's the only thing that isn't it's not the only thing that isn't fueled by greed, because you can't be fueled by greed and give. Did you know that? Try it. It doesn't work. The only way that works is there are a few people that give for wrong motives, because they want to get recognized, but they're usually found out and they usually don't give that much and it's all phony. But the ones that truly make giving a principle in their lives, especially a percentage giving, what happens? It breaks the back of greed, because think about it. I can't hold on and let go at the same time. Giving is a matter of surrender, because I might, see, for the consumer it's, I'm sorry, I can't give because I've spent it all, right? For the saver, you want to know what it is? I can't give because I might need that. And you see, the saver is typically, because they're budgeted and all that, they're usually good with giving, but they want to give down here. Number one, I'll save. Number two, I'll spend. Number three, I'll give whatever I have left over. And God is saying, oh, no, you're missing the point. I want you to give to me as an act of worship that says you trust me. Now, please don't, consumer, here's where the danger is going to come for you. Because it's the same one I have. Oh, that's easy. I consume everything. I'll just give and not even care how much I give. That's me. That's not what God said. He wants you to manage your money correctly. That's why percentage is so important. Percentages mean you have to actually figure out where you're at, okay? Some of us can't give. So if you're a consumer, be careful of that, because you'll just want to give and you just really don't care. You're just letting money flow. And then it's like, oh, man, my kids can't eat. Or I'm not paying my bills. A lot of Christians, I have faith. So that means I won't pay my bills, but I'll give it to God. Can I tell you something? That's wrong. It's the worst testimony that there is as a church. As a businessman, I wasn't a businessman, but I worked for some. And I worked for a contractor. And the churches were the people we didn't want to do business with because they don't pay their bills. Look to God for your money. What is this stuff? It's the worst business practices ever, and it's the worst testimony ever. Please don't do that. Don't give to God without considering and planning. That's not what he's saying. He's not saying don't plan. What he's saying is this: give first. That if you give first, let me tell you what giving is going to do in your life, is what giving is going to do is it's going to break the back of greed, because for me to give, it means I have to cut back on the other portion. So if I give first and I save 10% so I have enough that if something emergency happens, I have it, and then I live on 80%, that's the formula. And if you think about it, I know how simple this sounds, but I've been thinking a little bit about it this week, and I've been looking at it, and I went, yeah, I heard it from Andy Stanley. I heard it from Dave Ramsey. I've heard it from a lot of financial experts, and I went, this is the solution to everything. If I were to go before Congress today, which they never asked me to come, but if they did, And they said, John, what is the financial plan for the United States of America? Because if we did this, it would take care of everything. This is the best financial plan there would ever be. Do this, and everything would be fine. I'm telling you, it's God's plan, and God's plan works. I mean, let me put it this way. If the churches alone would do this, if everyone gave a tenth in all the churches in the United States of America, just America, we would obliterate poverty in the entire world. Oh, wait a minute. And the churches weren't greedy. If we weren't greedy and we spent the money the way God wanted, then I have a feeling more people would give too, right? And then what would happen? If we had 10% of the entire income of all the churches in the United States of America, if everybody gave, it would obliterate poverty as we know it. Not one hungry child, not one person sex traded in this world. You see, God has a plan, and it works. But it's not just about that. You know what it's about? It's about your heart. Because when you give, something occurs inside you that goes, hey, I can't give. And all of a sudden you find that the people that give, what happens? It's the happiest place that there is. You will find that giving truly blesses your life more than holding or spending. Now, you don't believe that because that's not what the culture teaches and that's not what the devil wants you to believe. But what we think is if I can spend more, then I'll be happy. And here's what we're thinking. Hey, I know what I'm going to do. When my income gets to a certain amount, then I'll finally do this. And I remember for me and Marie, when it came, the problem for us is how do we give because we don't have? I mean, like we can't even pay our bills. I remember the guy that was financially counseling me. He said, yeah, John, that's right. This is the formula, okay? But you can't do that formula right now. Because you owe so much, you can't even, there's nothing. There's nothing. I mean, like, I'm talking about my monthly payments. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about I had too much, I couldn't do this. And he said, here's what I want you to do. I just want you, if God blesses you, give just a portion of it. Give 1%. Give something. I don't want you to be so concerned about percentages. I know there's some legalistic people here that are going to beat me up later for this, and I'm okay with that. It's my story. I'll stick to it, okay? And what I learned was this, is that God didn't necessarily care about the amount. What he cared was the heart of a giver, because at some point we get so impoverished that we believe we can't give anything. And he's going, I can't bless you until you do, because here's your problem. You think, well, because I don't have a lot, and here's what I know. It doesn't matter the amount, because a lot of rich people can't give because they got so much. It's such a big number. They're like, I couldn't give that. A lot of poor people can't give because I don't have anything, so I can't give that. And here's what I know. The people that don't give are the most miserable people that there are. I know poor people that are the most miserable people you'll ever meet. Just because you're poor don't make you happy. By the way, just because you're rich don't make you happy either. I know some rich people that are the most miserable people I've ever met. I also know some rich people. There's a billionaire that lives in Virginia Beach. You probably didn't know that. He didn't know me personally, but I know about him. He's one of the happiest people there are on the planet because he gives so much. He understands this. It isn't about how much. It's about that you give. God isn't interested in the amount because he doesn't need the money. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It isn't about the money. It's about the heart of giving, because when you give, the habit that breaks the back of greed in your life is giving. Because you cannot give and be greedy at the same time. Try it. This doesn't work. You can't hold on and give. It's the act. It's the first act that changes your life. Surrender. Why am I doing this? I'm surrendering to God. Now, I understand that a lot of people aren't going to hear me today, because here's the problem. The white elephant in the room, and it's there for me too, is the self-serving part is well, 10% you should give to the local church, which I truly believe. If you're getting blessed here and the local church is helping the community and we're doing the things that help the people around you, then yes, I truly believe that you should give to the church, and I unapologetically say that, especially the people that are part of this church. If you're not part of this church, we didn't ask you here to get your money. That's not the point. But I also know that the number one problem is that by saying giving, it sounds like we're being self-serving. And I want to dispel that today, because here's my fear. You're going to walk out these doors and you're going to go, oh, he's trying to get money for the church. I'm not. I do think it's great to give money to the church, and we do have a business side, and we do all these things, and we do a lot to support the community, and I'd love for you to be part when you're ready. But I don't want you to wait just because you have that objection today. Because here's what I know. If you would start giving, God could change your life. So if you go, you know what, I wouldn't give here because you're trying to get money for the church, then give somewhere else. How about that? Find another church, plant, and give it to them. They need it. It's okay. And I know some people are going to go, oh my gosh, then what is our church going to do? We got people that give and they're generous and all that. And I believe that you should give here, but when you're ready, you give here. Please don't give here if you're begrudging it, because it don't count. Oh, they might not be able to pay your salary, John. That's okay. I can get a job. I've had one before, and I'll get it again. And I love that the church can pay me, but it's okay. I'm really okay with that. I'm really okay if we never have a building. I'm really okay if we never have stuff. I think we should, because I think this church can impact this community more than anything else. I'll give my whole life to it. But here's what I want to do. If that's your objection today, please don't give here, but please give. And if you can't give, then you need to understand it ain't a problem you have with me. It's a problem you have with you. You are fueled by greed because you can't give, even when it's an organization that's not here. Give it to World Vision. Give it to a church plant. Give it to Elevate Church down the street. Give it wherever you need to give, but start giving somewhere. And if you can't give anything, you need to ask yourself a question. Why is it that I'm so consumed with me? Because you are going to be the most miserable person. You probably already are. You're praying to God, God, I need this. God, I need this. God, I need this. And God's going, why don't you give it to me? Because you said, ask anything in my name. Oh, I forgot about your name, but that's okay. Ask anything and you'll give it to me. That's not what he said, by the way. Ask anything in my name and I'll give it to you, but you're not even doing this, and you think God's going to bless your life when you're not even giving, and he's going, you're worshiping the God of mammon, and you're asking me to fund him. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's going to wreck your life. Why am I saying that? Because it wrecked my life. I consumed it. I was miserable. I can't eat enough. I can't do enough. You get it? And it's this frantic, I just got to have, and God is saying, hey, just give me the first. Why? Because he needs it? God doesn't need your money. And I'll be honest, and I know everybody's going to hate me for saying it, neither does the church. God's church will be built with or without us. But here's what I know. If you give, you will be blessed beyond anything you can imagine. Now, whether he changes your financial situation or not. And he says, put me to the test. And that's why I say, if it's self-serving, please don't give here. Now, if you believe in this church, I think you should give here. It's awesome. And I think you should have input. We want your input on where we need to spend this money in the church. We need a consensus. We need to decentralize this thing, and we need to bless the community that we're in. It's no longer enough to just come and meet as the church. We need to be the church. And there's so much in our communities that they need us. I'm going to tell you about a vision for that in just a minute, but what I want you to grasp today is this. Would you be willing to consider living this way? If your life isn't working out, if your financial house is not in order, would you consider using these guardrails that I guarantee you will bless your life? Give first, though. Give God his portion first. And you look at your finances and you go, you know what? I'm sorry. I can't even do 1%. Then can you do $1? Can you do $10? What can you do? What can you give? Maybe it's an angel tree. Maybe that's your first step. I don't know. But think about a first step and take that step towards God. And I guarantee you'll become a life of a giver and you'll never regret it. I have never once in my entire life, and maybe there's somebody that does, never once when I gave money to God did I ever go, man, I wish I could have that back. I have never stood at a graveside where somebody said to me, man, you know, they gave a lot of money to church. I wish that they hadn't done that. They gave a lot of money to help the community. I wish they hadn't done that. You know what? The person dying in the deathbed, when I'm watching them take their last breath, and I've been there many times, I have never yet seen the person that said, you know what I wish? Man, I think about that money all the time that I gave. Let me tell you what I do have, though. I wish I hadn't spent it all. I wish I hadn't saved it all because I got all this pile of money. What does it mean now? Be careful where you're spending your life. Give first to God. You see, God had a plan. He understands exactly what he's talking about. He's going, I'm going to let you be part. And then all of a sudden you're going to realize for the first time, wait a minute. Consumption isn't going to fill me. God is. That's why he's asking. You understand? That's why Jesus is saying, you cannot serve two masters. And by the way, mammon is not going to, the God of money is not going to tolerate you giving to the God of the universe. But the God of this universe is going to be patient with you. There's one other part before I finish this up, and that's this. There are some people that are like me, that you are so down that what I'm saying today makes you feel so guilty that you just go, oh, I just can't do it. And the reason you're saying that is because you're going, man, I've squandered it, and for me to admit this right now, I'm just so messed up I can't do this. And I've been thinking about that a lot today because the message like this comes across very guilt-driven when we start talking about what we could do, what we could have done. In a day in my quiet time, I just remember God just saying to me, he's like, John, what I'd like to do is could you give me your regrets? I've been reading a book, and I don't want to talk about what it is, but there's a book that I've been reading, and one of the things that it mentioned was it said, hey, this is what you needed to do, and you didn't do it. Now, don't get stuck in remorse. Start doing it. You see, Satan, I'm just telling you, I just think somebody today needed to hear that, and I don't know who it is, but there's somebody here that you haven't been doing your life right, you haven't been doing your finances right, and you see a message like this, and you're not really offended because you go, I don't agree with this. You're kind of like, I don't know where to start, and here's the thing, I've been messing up so long that what difference does it make if I even do anything? And God is saying, here's what I want you to do. I just want you to start, just right where you are. I don't care about the amounts. Don't sit there at 10%, whatever it is. It isn't about that. It's about giving a portion to God, and you start there, and he'll help you with the rest. And I remember for me, let me just give somebody some hope today. I remember sitting there as an associate pastor and crying with this guy. I never cry. You know, that's not me. I don't cry. You do. After you're a follower of Christ, somehow you do. It's weird. Frenchie cries. But sorry. But I just remember crying because there's nothing worse than going, I can't meet my family's needs. And I remember crying and going, I'm supposed to be able to give 10%, And now that mask is off, I'm not. Well, I want to be able to give, but I can't. And I remember it's like God just impressed on me. He was like, but one day you will. I don't want you to give 10% today. What I want is I just want you to give 1%. And realize that, you messed up your life, and that's okay. Just start giving to me. And I'll forgive you, and I'll make up the difference. And you know what? I remember the day that I could give 10%. It was one of the greatest days of my life. But it starts small. And some of you guys, you just need to start small. You're like, I don't think I can do all that. I don't even know how that all works. But you need to make sure you instill into your life this spirit of generosity, because I'm telling you, greed isn't going to get you there. And unfortunately, we're coming up against the holiday season, and it's all mounted greed. And I know, because I'm part of it too. It's like, oh, I want. Krispy Kreme is going to change their donuts. Okay. And I am so excited, There's all the Star Wars stuff. Okay, sorry. Marie, will you let me buy the $2,000 costume? Okay, I'm sorry. No. Hear me out. Start, because it will change your life. Let me tell you how Jesus finishes it up. Matthew 6:24. No one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. If you could circle two things for me, circle the word serve. You know what he's talking about here? Priority. When he talks about this, he's saying you'll be devoted to it. This is what's first. Anything wrong with spending money? Nothing. Anything wrong with saving money? Nothing. But he said you will be devoted to it. It will rule you. And he goes, I want to know what rules your life. And out of a loving God, he's saying you need to choose, because here's the thing. God has a plan for your life, and the God of money has a plan for your life. Which one do you want? And he's saying, I know I'll do a better job because I've given my one and only son for you. I've given my one and only son. You can trust me. Now live like I tell you. Then he goes on to say many things, and then we'll skip down to verse 31. He says, so do not worry. When it comes to consuming, when it comes to money, how many people are worried? Don't raise your hand. Because I'm about to make a point, you're going to be really upset if you raise your hand in a minute. So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, and what shall we drink, and what shall we wear? What shall we consume? How do we take care of our needs? I'm afraid. Anybody afraid? Jesus is talking about it, because that's what they were saying. They're going, you cannot serve both God and money. And they're going, yeah, that's nice in theory, but we kind of need the food to eat. Kind of need the food for clothes. Kind of need the food. We kind of need the money for our kids. Get it? What shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? Do not worry. Why? Verse 32. For the pagans run after such things. You're worried about it because you're living like a pagan. You know what that is? Somebody very far from God. That's all it is. Somebody living not contrary to God. That's what they run after. Followers of Jesus don't. Here's what he says that they do. And your heavenly Father knows that you need them. Can you circle this? Knows. God knows what you need. How many people would live different, or maybe say different prayers, if you knew that God... Can I tell you something about what prayer is and what prayer is not? Prayer is not about informing God. I don't know if you thought it was, but some of us pray that way. Oh, God, you have no idea. Right? Who prays that way, right? I mean, right? But don't we, though, when we're angry? Have you ever prayed that prayer? God, I just need this right now. No, you don't, John. Okay. You get the picture? I need this new car. I need this thing. I need this. I need. And I know how much it is for me. It's almost like the biggest addiction I've ever had in my life, where it's like I'm just coming out of my skin. You know what I mean? I need it. It's this craving. And he goes, but God knows. How different would you live if you knew that God knew? How much comfort would you have if God said, I got this, whatever that thing is in your life right now? Anybody praying about finances right now? Besides me? And God is going, I got it. Trust me. Trust me. Do what I ask you to do, but trust me. He knows. Jesus is blowing their minds. So do this, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and then all these other things will be added to you as well. That's what it means. You've seen the verse before. Maybe you didn't realize the context. I didn't. Up until this week, I don't know that I ever realized this verse has to do with money. It has to do with Jesus' premise of saying, you cannot serve both God and money. Put me first. And if you put me first, I'll fix the rest. By the way, most of us that are consuming, we don't even want as much once we understand Jesus. We don't even need to save as much once we understand that God's got this and God knows. But we don't trust God. That's the truth. And we don't put him first. So what I'm asking you to do today is this. I'm asking you to think about it for just a minute. Do I? And if you don't, why not? Maybe you need to go home and you really need to wrestle with this a little bit and look at your financial house and go, well, yeah, it made sense, but I just can't do that. Why? Well, you just don't know. God knows. There's a reason why he said, put me first. And when you do, see if I don't open up the floodgates of heaven and bless your life. I can't tell you, I can line up and I'm not going to do it because I don't like that. I mean, it's creepy. I know other places do. I'm not going to do it. But I could line up person after person after person that would say, you know what, I didn't know if I should give because I got this thing coming up, but I went ahead and gave to the Lord what he told me to give. It's not that I took it from somebody else, but I didn't know how this was all going to work out, and I was so scared to give, and I gave, and you know what? God showed up. And I'm telling you, I mean, it is not one person. It is a whole bunch of people. But yet, sometimes we still doubt God. Even now, sometimes I still doubt God. Put me first and see what happens. And even if he doesn't change your circumstance, you know what he changed in me? You know what's better than your circumstance? Your perspective. And when God changes your perspective, it is golden. It is what you're after all. What do you really want? You want to be happy? You'll never be happier than when you do it God's way. You'll never be happier than when you give and break the back of greed. I'm telling you, a greedy person is never a happy person, not for long. Take it from somebody that's done it. I'm telling you, you cannot do it. And if you establish these guardrails in your life and you say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start right where I'm at. Maybe for some of us, you're a consumer, and where you need to start is you need to start by getting a budget so that you can give. A lot of us have bigger hearts than we do checkbooks because we don't manage our money correctly. And we might have to look at our things and go, oh, that means I have to downsize. I know. I have to sell something. Why do you think I drive a van with a dent in it? No, I'm just playing. As a reminder, right? We got to the place where we could afford to buy another car, and then we didn't care about it anymore. Isn't that funny? We cared more about doing some other stuff than that anymore. That wasn't our status symbol anymore. Anything wrong with having a new car? Absolutely not. You got a new car? We're so excited for you. Awesome. God did that for you. Great. Don't go in debt, though. Don't let debt rule your life. Don't let consumer debt rule your life. Don't let saving and putting all your trust in your money rule your life. Let God rule your life. It'll be worth it. You couldn't have a better person. You couldn't have somebody who loves you more, somebody that would give his one and only son. Okay, so here's how I want to end today. I just want you to imagine with me just for a second If our country ever did this, what our country would be like. What would that be like? If we really did this, what would it look like? I can't even imagine that place, can you? That's not going to happen, by the way. Okay, so just thoughts, just things that I like to think about. Okay, imagine if the church did this. Imagine if everyone that was a Christ follower in every church said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give 10% to God. Even not, let's just say they don't give it all to the local church, but they give to God. Imagine what the world would look like. I know, we got some millennials here today, and they get very turned off. I was studying about millennials because I'm not one. I'm too old. Marie's like, I told somebody we were at a conference this past week, and I said, the guy was like, how many millennials do we have? And I said, I'm not one. And Marie's like, you really don't need to say it. That was hurtful, man. It was really hurt my feelings. But I'm not one. But here's what I do understand, and we have some things in common. But millennials want to change the world. Our kids are awesome. I mean, they want to change the world. Now, they don't have a clue how to do it. Okay, but they want to. I won't ask you to stand up if that's who you, but I got a feeling somebody's going to touch your heart to go, yes, this is it. And what I'm seeing is this. I see a vision that goes, hey, I can't change the world. I can't change the whole church. But our church, what if our church did this? I don't know how it starts, but I'm going, hey, what if we all said, hey, you know what? We're going to give what God said to give. Now, I know we don't. I thought you didn't look at the finances. I don't. I only look at one figure, how much we give. And unless we're living in Ethiopia, no, I'm just playing. We don't all give 10%. Now, we're a very generous church. I've said that before. We're doing amazing things, and some people can't help it because you're down, and it's not a guilt message. All I'm telling you is this. I know for a fact we're not all giving 10%. I know it. I know for a fact I don't always give 10%. To my shame. You need a better leader. But we can change. And here's what I know. If we did, I just want you to think about one thing today. If we did, we could fund a lot of those dreams that you're thinking about. What needs to happen in our community? What people need to be helped in our community? If we did this, it could be the most amazing thing we've ever done in our lives. And our millennials, we could fund them to do the things they want to do. Dig wells, do the stuff, change the world. And all of a sudden we change it for the cause of Jesus Christ. Imagine that. Both physically and, imagine when we go to the school and we say, man, we got so much money. Can we help you guys? What if the church wasn't just a consumer? I mean, how many churches just consume? I hated church for a long time. Because the church in the community wasn't the center of the community. It was just like, this leech that sucked off the community. Sorry, excuse me. But what if we changed that? What if we became the center of the community where they were, hey, you need something, that church can help you. But not only with money, but they help you with managing it. They help you with doing this stuff. And they are the place you go for ideas. But here's the thing. They're so generous. They're not greedy. What if we could do that? And it starts with each one of us by ourselves. Some of you guys are already doing that. That's awesome. And I know, I don't even have to ask because I know who you are, because you don't tell how much you give, but you can tell. It's like a person that gives to God, it's just like there's a spring in your step. There's just this joy. I also know the ones that don't. There's not such a spring in your step. And I know some of you guys are in crisis and you're going, how could you dare to ask me that? And the reason we're in crisis is we never did this. And take it from somebody that's been in the worst crisis financially, that when I got out, you know how it worked? Just a little bit at a time. And as I gave a little bit and as I trusted God, all of a sudden it just brought it out of my life. It's absolutely amazing. If we would practice this, it would be absolutely amazing. Now, you might need some help with that, and I get that. Maybe I've oversimplified it. But here's what I believe. I really believe. Imagine what our church could do if we all gave like that. And we were committed to not be greedy as a church. Now, our church is committed. We give 10% of what the church brings in. What you guys give, a lot of it goes to operations and all these kinds of things, salaries and different stuff like that. But 10% of it goes to help in the community. We give international missions, we give local missions, and we give Storehouse, which is to help people that have benevolent needs in our church and in the community. And you guys are super generous, and it's amazing. We've had some really good men that have held the line, because as a consumer, you don't want me running, But we've prayed. And there's been many times we've been tested where we said, as a church, where we were going, Maybe we need to change that. Nothing says a church has to do that. But everybody felt like, oh man, that would be weird if we didn't, right? I'm so glad we did. I think you'll be so glad you did. So what I like you to do is this. I like you to just pray. God, what are you telling me to do? What are you calling me to give? Some of you guys have been holding on so tight, you've been worshiping the God of money. Some of you guys, you got such a crisis, and you're going, I can't give today, but I need God to show up in a mighty way. That's okay. He's not asking for money. That's not all that you can give. Let him show up in your life. Some of you, you just need God to get your head straight. Some of you, you're probably mad at me. If you give, don't give here. You're giving mad money. No, I'm just playing. But give. Because here's what I know. When you give, all of a sudden it's going to unlock something in your life. It's going to unlock something in your life. And all of a sudden you're going to have joy in your life. You're going to come around and go, I didn't give to your church, John. Okay. That's kind of funny. But I gave. And you know, when you're in eternity, I believe every one of those dollars, I think God's going to go, look what's happened. The eternal reward is going to be, look how you affected the world. I took the money you gave, and God is a good manager of that money. And he takes what we give, and it's unbelievable how he affects lives. You cannot outgive God. Trust him. He wants to bless you. He is a heavenly Father that loves you. I don't know. That's the guardrails that I have. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to pray for you today. Let's stand for prayer.